Welcome to my journey from being a siloed sessional UDL advocate at a class and subject level to being part of an emerging university-wide community of practice group advocates. This presentation begins by explaining where UDL began. Then briefly explains the who, why, what and how of learning. It continues with where my UDL journey started. Then adds that there have been some opportunities along the way, including being introduced to the +1 approach. Finally, there are some opportunities for you to join or expand your UDL journey. Where UDL began. Universal Design for Learning was developed by the Center for Applied Special Technology, known as CAST. I have known it since Guidelines 2.0, 2011. Then more so with Guidelines 2.2, 2018. And now the most recent iteration with Guideline 3.0, 2024, shown in the familiar 3-column graphic on the right-hand side of the screen. The goal of UDL is learner agency that is purposeful and reflective, resourceful and authentic, strategic and action-oriented. CAST provides many useful resources to explain the benefits of using Guidelines 3.0, 2024, such as the one displayed on the screen, Unlocking Learner Agency. Click the link below the slide title to watch the video, or scan the QR code on the lower right-hand side to access the clip. CAST's Guidelines 3.0, 2024, introduces the who of learning, which emphasizes learner agency and identity as part of variability. This acknowledges individual, institutional, and systemic biases as barriers to learning without limits. It emphasizes the value of interdependence and collective learning. It shifts from teacher-centered to learner-centered language. The who of learning is a dimension that intersects across all 3 UDL principles of the why with multiple means of engagement, the what with multiple means of representation, and the how with multiple means of action and expression. Where my UDL journey started. In 2015, I undertook a research-based final year social work placement with a pilot study for the School of Social Sciences at Western Sydney University, exploring the implementation of reasonable adjustments or accommodations from both the learners' and academics' perspectives. I began to explore the benefits of using a UDL framework, but with time constraints we decided to leave this for a potential PhD area of interest. In 2016, I began, as both a sessional tutor and as a PhD candidate, with research that extended the pilot study across all schools at the university. I continued to engage with learning about using UDL and the connection with the UN Sustainable Development Goal 4, quality education. In 2017, I presented my PhD work, for the first time, at the Pacific Rim International Conference on Disability and Diversity in Honolulu. In 2019, I presented some of my research at the AASW conference in Adelaide, Achieving UN Sustainable Development Goal 4 Quality Education for Students with Disability in Higher Education. I presented my thesis, while waiting for acceptance, in 2020 at the Pacific Rim International Conference on Disability and Diversity in Honolulu. A few days after our return to Australia, the pandemic forced us into lockdown and the world as we knew changed. In 2022, my journey finally resumed. Joining the UDL in tertiary education community of practice group became a lifeline to my growth as an academic. Meeting with colleagues who willingly shared their practice wisdom on all things UDL, including strategies to enhance the lifelong educational journey of all our learners. I was a mentee in the Badugilang Sessional Staff Mentoring Scheme, and my project focused on using UDL as my teaching pedagogy. I completed the Disability Awareness online training on Universal Design for Learning in Tertiary Education. Finally, in December 2022, I participated in the ADCET Masterclass at Monash University, Melbourne, Beyond Curiosity, Developing a Sustainable Roadmap for UDL Implementation Within Your Organization. In 2023, I was in awe of learning about Professor Tom Tobin's UDL +1 approach. The advantage of thinking through this lens, as Tom says, you don't have to change everything you do all at once, just change one thing that will make a difference to the pinch points. In collaboration with my sessional colleagues, and considering the insights from our previous students, we began to develop and implement some additional assessment resources for a few subjects that we worked on together. We realized that some students were unable to break down what the assessment was asking them to do. This may have been due to several reasons. Often the students were part of one or more of our diverse equity groups. The assessment resource was made available to all the teaching team. We could use them in the workshops when unpacking the assessment. These additional resources supported all our students, as they were posted in the assessment folder on the online learning platform. They were accessible for students who had missed the workshop covering the assessment discussions and activities. This strategy also reduced the number of emails that had been occurring as the submission due date and time was approaching. Click the link below the slide title to watch the video, or scan the QR code on the lower right-hand side to access the clip. In February 2024, in collaboration with my colleague Josie Gayling about our work implementing Tobin's UDL +1 approach, I presented our poster, Embracing UDL Principles for Transforming Higher Education for Students with Disability and Diverse Equity Groups, at the Pacific Rim International Conference on Disability and Diversity in Honolulu. Our poster is displayed on the right-hand side of the screen. This was the first time that I am aware that conversations and presentations about using UDL were sought. Attendees were invited to share their experiences of using UDL, or learn more about it, and if they were part of a UDL community of practice groups in higher education, or if they'd like to find one. On my return home to Sydney in early March 2024, I commenced as a full-time associate lecturer of social work at Western. Things slowly began to gather momentum across Western, first at a subject level, then at a faculty level. In April 2024, I was invited to share my research spotlight on the work that I had been doing with UDL and the +1 approach. In September 2024, it seemed that the university began to break down some barriers and hosted roundtable discussions with student representatives, disability advisors, multiple faculties, equity and diversity coordinators, teaching and learning teams, and more. A common part of the discussions were the areas of work already being done using UDL. We just didn't know about each other. The silos were beginning to be dismantled. On reflection, groundwork had been happening at an institutional level without many of us knowing about them. In June 2024, as a new decasualized academic, I commenced the Foundations of University Learning and Teaching program, known as FULT. My FULT proposal was approved in November. It was based on UDL principles and learner agency. In January 2025, in collaboration with sessional tutors and co-design from student inputs, we developed UDL resources for the project. At the end of February 2025, my project titled Increasing Student Retention and Engagement Through Co-Designing Supplementary Assessment Resources Based on Universal Design for Learning Principles, received ethics approval. The report and publications are pending. At Western during 2024 and 2025, we've had several new UDL initiatives being trialed or introduced at an institutional level. 1. Accessibility statements on subject homepage online platforms. I am part of the pilot for adding an accessibility statement to the homepage of my autumn online platform. I am also trialing a new online platform in preparation for autumn 2026. 2. Digital accessibility best practices are being introduced, grounded on UDL with the +1 approach. 3. UDL at Western Community of Practice Group launched on Global Accessibility Awareness Day, May 2025. There are several opportunities for you to join or expand your UDL journey, one being free e-learning. Free e-learning UDL in tertiary education are offered via disability awareness. These e-learning courses were developed as part of the Australian Government initiative, National Disability Coordination Officer Program, which sadly lost its funding, and the Australian Disability Clearinghouse on Education and Training known as ADCET. Click the link below the slide title to access the free e-learning or scan the QR code on the lower right-hand side to access the disability awareness resources. Free e-learning badge program are offered by a head based in Dublin, Ireland. They have recently introduced an e-badge on accommodations, known as reasonable adjustments in Australia, is now available. European Union countries have passed legislation for web material to be accessible.
The Web Content Accessibility Guidelines is an internationally recognized standard created by the World Wide Web Consortium, W3C.
Australia has guidelines that are recommended. I am curious if this will become mandated here too. Click the link below the slide title to watch the video, or scan the QR code on the lower right-hand side to access the clip. In March 2024, Altitude introduced the National Charter for Universal Design for Tertiary Education. What does it mean for Irish higher education institutions to adopt the Charter? It is a declaration of positive intent by your institution to make incremental and sustainable progress towards embedding a universal design approach in the systems and practices of the institution. Click the link below the slide title to access the resource, or scan the QR code on the lower right-hand side to access the Charter. Another opportunity is joining some UDL community of practice groups. Joining the UDL in tertiary education community of practice group became a lifeline to my growth as an academic. Meeting with colleagues who willingly shared their practice wisdom on all things UDL, including strategies to enhance the lifelong educational journey of all our learners. This group fostered hope that I could collaborate with like-minded colleagues and embrace an institutional-wide approach at my university. The details to learn more about this group are displayed on the screen. I have also joined one that is hosted by CAST in the US. Time differences can be interesting, and I participate in webinars with a head in Ireland. Again, the time differences can be challenging. More recently, Western Sydney University launched their UDL at Western Community of Practice Group. Click the link below the slide title to access the resource, or scan the QR code on the lower right-hand side to access more about ADCET. The list of references concludes my poster presentation. Thank you for visiting with me.